you get that there's something here that people are not understanding, and you get that, well, maybe they're affected by it and they should understand, and then you find out more outside of the parameters of the film. And I think for me that would apply equally to Burma VJ, that it is not even trying to, because what you, I mean, all that is necessary for a really, really complex and comprehensive understanding of what we do see. But I think what we see suggests a lot of things, and there can never be an end to, if you're going to pack information into a film which is just basically maybe trying to document a particular phenomenon of this sort of, reporting from a closed country. The mechanics of it, but point taken that yes, sometimes a little more, maybe when you don't have a sense of where it's coming from, you don't have enough of a critique of the state, and then that can be seen as a problem. I also wanted to just, and I'm really glad that this work, ending with DWAND, perhaps does help us to not be very complacent. But it's also still possible for us to say that, well, DWAND is, it's some remote hamlet in some place called Chattisgarhi, and maybe it's just a sort of an aberration. But then, the very next films we're going to see after lunch, we're starting with some shots from ODISHA, which are really about the same kind of ravages and, taking over of land for mining for other purposes by the state, by its cronies, displacing of tribals, killing of tribal people there, and that sort of thing. So although our next session is called a disaster called development, the links are very much there between all of these different themes that we're talking about.
I think you need to make a distinction between the three films. One purports to be a documentary. Therefore, you have to see it and judge it by different standards. The other two are not documentaries. Okay? Especially the third one is actually based on a story by a Colombian author. And it's more or less a reproduction of that in an Indian context. So really foregrounding or backgrounding with any political stuff is really not called for. The middle film, I feel there's a clear reference to the communist regime. He mentions a president. Okay. While he is clearly situating the context of the film, all the other things are also valid, but he contextualizes it. He says he's been pardoned, or the sentence has been reduced by President Beirut. So that helps you to situate the movie. That is definitely the communist regime. So you have three different kinds of films, three different kinds of states operating. So this discussion can be taken forward if we really move on to the level of states and how they operate and how the repressive apparatuses in various states operate and what role does the judiciary play. But that's another debate. I just felt that with new technology coming in, this is a point which needs to be discussed. And what has happened is production, distribution, exhibition, and even viewership has changed. More and more films which should be seen together are being seen in the confines of the house. Movies which can be genuinely transformative are not being transformative for simply because of the reason that they are also becoming consumables. They're becoming products, documentaries, short films, which ideally should be seen in large groups and should be followed by discussions and calls to action maybe. These are all becoming items of consumption. And so in a sense, the spectator has also been affected by new technologies. And this is something we also need to take on board.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point. And it's yesterday when we saw a film like Fabricated by K.P. Shashi, and the discussions, and all of the discussions yesterday for those of you who were here, because we are in a space where there is space for those discussions and there's an interest in them, and there are people who are also part of the making of these films. And I can see exactly how just watching the film by yourself, you might have the same, you might have the same sort of critiques, you might even share the politics, you might even be a little more knowledgeable than maybe somebody else might be about certain things because you've been engaging with him, but the impact would be much less. And for somebody who isn't conversant with any of that, the sort of dialogue really helps. It helped me tremendously yesterday. I'm just going to now open it up for discussion, comments, reactions, questions.
We are not hearing anything about Chhattisgarh these days. I mean, things are still happening there. At one time, it seemed like, the media was at least reporting about it, but it just reminded me today that we are not hearing anything about what's going on. So much of what they're saying is that we are an open state, but we're a closed state as far as that is concerned. It's just not coming across.
It's really interesting because the first film is, the subtitle of the film is Burma Vijay reporting from a closed country, and you just said closed state. So there's a parallel right away for you. In fact, I thought the woman who passes in the beginning, I mean, who does she remind us of? I think it's very deliberate. I think there's a direct reference to Soni Sori. There's this one woman who passes these guys sitting there and chatting, and then, you hear the jackboots, and she looks troubled. She looks like she has things on her mind, and she moves out of frame. And they also sort of look at her like, so she could be somebody who's teaching in a nearby school, and a woman with a mind of her own, and who cares about what's happening in her society. And you wonder what those, what lies in store for her, actually. So for me, that's quite a powerful towards the beginning of the film.
I'd just like to react to what Aarti just said. We need to understand more deeply how the media functions in our country. And basically, it's corporate media, and there are consensus which are always generated. You won't get much about Kashmir. You won't get much about the Northeast. And now, therefore, there's slowly a silence also about the Maoist corridor. So these are things which are, it's not a conspiracy theory of the media, but there are consensus which develop that this is bad for the nation, what's happening here, and then therefore news is shut out. You won't get much news about the struggles of workers, okay? In the last 20 years, they've shut out everything about workers. So it's not that someone has decided this from on top that we won't give anything, but slowly these consensus, they start operating. Similarly, a consensus will operate even in the judiciary. That, okay, enough of trade unions and enough of all this tomfoolery, we must show these workers their place. So you'll find a number of decisions now going against workers. They get reinstated, they don't get compensation, they get 20% compensation, 30% compensation, no questions asked, and you can't challenge them. So we need to understand how the media in India operates, to understand these sometimes mystifying sudden silences. It's not mystifying, actually, if you really think about it.
It's like a collective, an attitudinal shift, which is leading to a sort of a amnesia that becomes institutionalized. And then there's no remembering what you forgot. So, yeah.
The other interesting link between the first and the third film, it seems to me, is this sense of the state. How does one put this? One has to be careful of the state as essentially almost like an illusion, all right? Because the guy could have slit his throat, all right, in the last one. It was so obvious. It was so obvious he could have done so. He didn't do so. Now, no doubt, partly in conventional deference to the story that he's following, but he could have altered the story if he wanted to. After all, he had the poetic license to alter the story. But he chose not to do that. That is where the power of the state lies. That's where the real power of the state lies, in this fabricated legitimacy. And why do I say that the first one? Because the key words that run through the whole discourse of that, in the voiceover in the film and so on, is fear. Fear keeps coming up throughout that thing. And also one reference to defiance. But that, interestingly, is the foreign media reporting on the situation in Burma. Defiance, the word defiance is used. Now, the thin line between state and non-state is all about what's in the head. It's entirely in the head, okay? It's about the uniform. For example, take the uniform. The same individual wearing a uniform and not wearing a uniform, how do you perceive that individual? It's the same individual, after all. It's not as if the individual has developed muscles or something when he's in uniform. Okay? So the power of suggestion that comes from these symbols of the state, from the iconography of the state, all right, which drill submission and respect into your head. The thin line that separates the state from the non-state is, quote unquote, respect. Respect for what? Respect for authority. And that is essentially the function of the family and of the school and of the whole educational system, to kind of drill this deep sense of submission or respect for the state into the mass of the civilian population. The division between the army and the non-army, the civilian and the military, between people who are out of uniform and people in uniform. So what is the state? Ultimately, the state is simply, quote unquote, respect for the state. Okay? And what is defiance? Defiance is the willingness to abandon that. That's what defiance is. It's the willingness to abandon that sense of obedience, or of respect for authority. So, ultimately in that sense, I think the state is an illusion. It's an illusion. It's there in the first film, it's there in the third film. The third film, it's palpable, because what holds him back is this, practically the whole past of his community, of the whole society, that you can't possibly do that.